Free Speech Friday, something that Sean does. He'll be back, by the way, just to remind everybody, he'll be back on Monday. He'll still be in Bali at the moment. I'm looking forward to what 10 days in Bali has done to him. I'd like to be there on Monday morning. But anyhow, Free Speech Friday, he normally hosts, and we're joined by a couple of guests to talk about the issues that have been making the news this week. And also I'm going to ask both our guests at the end, actually I might ask them straight at the front, Maurice Williamson, the former National Party Cabinet Minister and now Auckland City Councillor, joins us. Maurice, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Michael.
And David Farrar, the founder of, I think it's the best political blog in the country, but also of Curia Research. David Farrar joins us as well. David, love to have you on.
Great to be here.
Good on you, mate. Listen, I was going to ask this question right at the end, but it's just so exciting I want to ask it straight away. Who's going to win the US presidential election? Maurice.
Okay, well, I, like David, do quite a lot of analytics, and of course, having lived there as the Consul General as that last election time, I followed the mathematics of this quite carefully, and I can tell you that if the turnout is low or medium, then Trump will win easily. Harris has got to get a really good turnout into the 60s, and only 3 times since 1980, so I think that's 11 elections, has their turnout ever broken the 50-somethings and into the 60s. So I think they will get a good turnout, hopefully, but it's a pretty sad commentary on democracy that a country that's supposed to be the premium nation of the world can't even get 40% of their people off their arse to get out and vote. But I think turnout will be the difference. I'll make the prediction now. Turnout low, Trump's got it. Turnout way into the 60s, high 60s, Harris could do it.
Okay. David, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I basically do that. It's all about turnout. I don't think there's a single persuadable voter left. You know what you think of Trump. Correct. You're either for or against him. And I have to, all 7 swing states in the polls are within 1%. So if the polling error, as they call it, favours Trump, as it did the last 2 elections, he's going to win quite easily. If it favours Harris, because women have been motivated to turn out, she could sweep all 7. But you have to say the luck is with Trump. I think he must be the luckiest politician I've seen, because I'll be right, he should be in jail on the security documents, not for keeping them in the first place, but his keystone cops, like hiding them from the FBI, shifting them to his bedroom. They have him dead to rights. They get the most pro-Trump judge possible. Then he's got the Georgia case, dead to rights, state he can't pardon himself, but the DA is sleeping with the chief prosecutor, falls apart. Then the assassination attempt, which, misses him by a millimetre. And then finally, this week, a comedian at a Trump event, insults Puerto Rico, and there's 100,000 Puerto Ricans in Pennsylvania, probably the key state. Not good. But then Joe Biden comes along, calls half of American garbage,
yes,
and saves Trump. And the guy is so lucky that you have to think that come election, with it being this close, the luck's going to stay with him. So that's not the most data-driven analysis, but I am astonished by the number of breaks he's had.
I tell you, the Dems need to get a hot cup of cocoa with something really strong, sleepy-wise, and give it to Joe sort of by the afternoon and keep him right out of anything. The biting of the little baby yesterday is now...
I saw that too.
It's running across all the networks. Now, I don't think people would change their vote on it, but do we need... I mean, the thing in politics is when you're on message, you don't want anybody in your team to take you off. And so Kamala Harris's strategy will be, our message in the last couple of days will be this: we stick to it, we don't do anything, but we don't get taken off message. Joe goes along and bites a little baby dressed as a chicken. You think, this just can't be real. This can't be...
No, I see what you say. But they did, to be fair, they had locked him up in the White House. They hadn't put him into any of their campaigning. He just decided to intrude anyhow, didn't he?
Put the situation room and lock the door.
Exactly.
Well, what's interesting is they do a daily list of what they call surrogates for the presidential candidate, and that might be campaign spokespeople, cabinet secretaries, governors, even like Congress people. Every day they put this out. you know the one name the Harris campaign never lists? The President of the United States. They'll have a state senator listed, but not her boss.
What's even more tragic is he doesn't actually know that he's President of the United States still.
No, well, he might know. He might still think he is after the day, actually. Listen, Maurice, just on something else, celebrity endorsements. The other thing that struck me is I don't know if there are any celebrity endorsements for Donald Trump, but there's the entire weight of the US media and entertainment industry that have endorsed Kamala Harris. Even I see Arnold Schwarzenegger in the last 24 hours.
Yeah.
Does it have any influence at all, or does it just piss people off?
I think it's completely irrelevant. I don't think anybody I know, and therefore I don't think anybody in the normal world out there, would change their vote because they happen to see a rock singer believe that somebody was good. I think it's all showbiz and it's headlines and it's, to get Beyonce up dancing with you and all that. I don't think anybody says, oh, well, now Beyonce's singing a song, I'm changing my vote, which will affect the Middle East war, it'll affect Ukraine, because Beyonce sang. I don't think it makes a difference. In fact, if anything, I think it actually can have a bit of a perverse negative effect on things.
Yeah, a bit like Rob's Mob, really. Campaign for Rolling, I think it was.
There's heaps of those, Campaign for Rolling, and there's been plenty of them where all the celebrities have come out to back somebody, and it actually backfires. People just say, if you think telling me how I should vote in a important just because you happen to be a good rugby player or a great singer or a dancer, then bugger off. I'll make my... And I think people almost kick back against it. I wouldn't... If anyone's from a celebrity point of view said, I'm happy to endorse you, I'd say, go away.
David, I want to talk to you also about the male-female thing over there. I was reading some statistics, since you're both into it, you'll have seen them as well, that the majority of female voters are voting for Kamala Harris, and she seems to have energised them, as Maurice has just been talking about. But the majority of males are voting for Donald Trump. Why is that? Is it because Kamala Harris is the candidate, or is it because that's pushed back as well against what seems to be a feminist agenda through the Harris campaign?
Well, I keep a good contact with a whole lot of people I made contacts with when I was living there, and I've been on the phone to them a lot. That their vote not for Harris isn't anything to do with she's a woman. These are nearly all blokes. It's not because that she's a woman. It's because they think she's bloody hopeless. And so they reluctantly pin their bloody nose and go, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm voting for Trump because I think his economic policy and his foreign policy is better. It's just a shame there wasn't some more substance to it because I hate what Trump is as a human being.
And David, the other thing is the Economist magazine, which is pretty authoritative and a centre-right or perhaps even a right publication, has come out and endorsed Kamala Harris in the last 24 hours. And their argument essentially is, despite all the problems that they've got with Harris, Trump is just too great a risk economically, geopolitically, and internationally. What do you think?
Look, I agree with that. If you're voting on policies, and you're like me on the centre-right, you generally much prefer Trump's policies and the economy. But Nate Silver, who's probably the leading polling guru in the US, has a nice way of saying that before he gets to policy, he looks at, is there anything that disqualifies this person? And I think you can look at a lot of what Trump has done January the 6th. Trump doesn't really believe in democracy or the rule of law. So if that's important to you, you sort of go, I don't like Harris's policies, but, she believes in democracy and the rule of law.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I have to say I wouldn't have thought that, to be honest with you, I wouldn't have thought that was much of a vote winner. But there you go. Obviously, I'm wrong.
But hang on, Michael. His favourite people in the world are people like Putin and Kim Jong Un, and he loves those strong dictators who stand up and say, "You either if you don't what I do, we'll have you shot or exported or whatever." And
but I have tendencies like that often, Maurice, and so do you. Surely, sitting around the Auckland City Council, there must be people you want to march outside too.
All right, now I don't know how you could possibly say that.
Yeah, well, yeah. Now, listen, moving on. Coming back home, I was stunned by some welfare benefit statistics that came out this week. We've almost got to 400,000, which just seems absurd. That we've got that many New Zealanders aged 18 to 65 on some sort of welfare benefit. But the thing that stunned me was a piece that the Ministry of Social Development put out, that if you're on the dole under the age of 25, you're likely to spend the next 20 years on it. David, that is a seriously disturbing statistic.
It is, and not just for the individual concerned, but we have very hard data that children who grow up in a household where there's no working adult are much, we're talking exponentially more likely to go to jail, to not do well in education, etc. And the change happened, to be blunt, in 2017, where those projections of how many years you'll spend on future welfare have basically doubled from 10 to 20 years because, sanctions got released, etc. And everyone wants, I think, welfare to be there for those who need it. You're between jobs, you get made redundant. But long-term welfare dependency is probably one of the greatest challenges, both to the country, but actually for individuals, because once you get into that culture of not working, it's very, very hard to change it.
Maurice, you've been around for a long time. You went into politics 3 years before I did. I think your first term was 1987. You were grappling with that issue then. And you were a bit of a more market man, actually, at the time. I imagine you've calmed down a bit since then. But you were
still in that phase.
So, but then the market doesn't seem to be working then, because there's all these people.
No, it doesn't. No. Well, I tell you, that's because we're not prepared to take what is the harder line and say to somebody, you are not getting a benefit anymore unless you are doing something for it. And I tell you what, I wrote an article in the Herald many years ago, and I got absolutely poleaxed for it, because I talked about the sort of the DPB, or the dependent parent benefit, and I said, look, when you go in and apply for it, I want to know that if your husband's left you, or you're getting beaten up, or whatever, we're going to make there support, and there should be there to be a really good provider support for a solo mum. But I want a big square on the front of the page, which you fill out with a black pen. How many children do you have? And she'll say 3. You put 3. Right. Well, we're going to look after you and those 3, but no more. No more children while you're relying on taxpayers for your income. And guess what? I got absolutely from the women of the world. You can't tell a woman what her fertility should be. I said, no, I'm not. She can go and have more kids. She can have 5 more if she wants. But we won't support her for any more. Or the taxpayer won't. And that was considered evil. Now, I'm sorry, if you're reliant on somebody else getting up in the morning and going and working in a bloody workshop and getting covered in grease, paying their PAYA tax, if you're reliant on them for your income, you've got an obligation to be doing something in return for that.
Listen, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but, and here's the but, that's been said for the last 40 years.
Because we've never been brave enough to enforce it.
But that's national and Labour administrations, Maurice. I mean, there is no political will in New Zealand. So if there's no political will in New Zealand, one would presume, David, that these statistics are simply going to get worse. They're not going to get better. As Maurice says, these people breed. In addition to which, I would have thought, David, living on the benefit is not simply bad for you, but you just don't have enough money to be able to cope with the necessities of everyday existence, I would have thought.
No, it's not a great standard of living for you, for your children. And one solution, it's similar to what Maurice has talked about, but it's actually what Bill Clinton did, who was nominally a left-wing president, is he capped the lifetime years you can spend on welfare. He basically said, look, let's say it's 5 years. You may, your husband's rotten, you have to leave him, you lose your job. And that's had a massive impact on welfare rolls because people understand that concept. And they realise, well, I'm on year 3, I have to do it. And actually, when I worked for National in the early 2000s, we did some polling on this. And I said, well, let's look at what's reasonable. Why don't we ask about 3, 5, 10-year limits? And my boss at the time said, no, you underestimate how hardline the average person who Maurice described working hard at a job is. And he said test 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3, 5 years. And actually, the vast majority of New Zealanders came back and said, no, look, 1 to 2 year lifetime limit is what they think. So they want it there, but they see this in terms of months or a short number of years, not a long number of years.